So, hello everyone, this is Emmanuel Holloway.
It's your boy Steven Newman.
And our YGS audience, you are listening to and watching Financial Therapy. I appreciate your patience. So today we're going to be discussing accountability and finance. What does that mean? Well, I'm just going to go out on the record. I had this conversation with my mother yesterday. Hi, Mom. We talked about accountability, but we was talking about, health and fitness. But one thing that reminds me when I hear about accountability was Rick Cedarberg, and he told us there is no accountability without consequence. There is no accountability without consequence. So when thinking about, our finances, and we want to hold ourselves accountable for what we spend, where we put our money, how can we become accountable, and what type of consequences can we put in place that will encourage us to do right by our money? So if you have any remarks or any suggestions, please reach out. Don't want to be a doom and gloom episode. It's like, when you don't, you don't want it to be a doom and gloom episode, but consequences, just a reminder. If I had to, paint a picture and give a story, when we're training the kids, we're training them for basketball, and there's a certain level of intensity that we require when you step on the basketball court, and if you don't bring that intensity, I put you on the bench. That's just what it is. And I let the parents know, I let everybody in your network.
Yeah, I put your kid on the bench.
Yeah, I put him on the bench. But it's a great opportunity for you to understand your value, and figure out what your value is, and get back to that mindset to where you can be productive, because you'll get an opportunity again. So I believe consequence is very important. It is extremely important. One thing that's uncomfortable is looking at that ledger and realizing that you've got 100 things on that ledger of expenses that whether it was miscellaneous or whatever the case may be. But the encouraging thing is when you look over there and you have more saved after you subtract, and you're like, wow. And so when I was listening to Peter J. Daniels, he said, your ability to tolerate pain will make you successful. So I know this might be doom and gloom to try to think of the consequences of your actions, but it's necessary. It's important. Don't feel guilty. I know I'm talking to myself right now. I don't want to feel guilty for buying that throwback or buying them Jabos and going to the
strap.
with the strap. You didn't get strapped, it wasn't Jabos. Buying them Jabos and then going to the after party of the probate. And
I remember we went to France one time, and we were trying to find Jabot, couldn't find it. They weren't out there.
There's somebody
should have learned a lesson.
It looked like
it might be a whole lesson in that, but we couldn't find it. Man, shout out to Cap Creek Middle School.
Y'all went to France in middle school?
Yeah, the Foreign Language Club, 7th grade.
Wow.
We went to London, Paris, and Madrid.
Wow.
Out there. And we were listening to at the time,
What?
Project Pat.
What?
Mr. Don't Play. He's out. Man. That was the era with the G-Shock CD player. That's back when you start to move like you wanted to move.
Yeah, without skipping.
Oh man. And Prestos. The Nike store was like that out there. I do remember that. But we couldn't find your boat. My bad.
Hope y'all didn't hear that on the audio.
Something about like the popularity wasn't what we thought it was, and I'm not sure if they were aware of the popularity that was happening in America around it. But it wasn't the same when we got out there. That's one thing I do remember. But anyway,
it has a lot to do with perception and perspective, marketing, and to make it seem as if this is something.
see value.
Yeah, when it's not. So.
Man, I thought, man, you were the man. Just think about that. Like, you were the man. All in your mind. You went to France, they were like.
I remember Ray Cash, and he was like, I'm in my own mind. You remember that? You remember him?
Who?
I think his name was Ray Cash.
That name sounds
I'm
familiar.
a pimp in my own mind. T.I. did a feature on that.
Shout out to Ray Cash, sorry. I don't remember the
I'm
song.
a pimp in my own mind. I remember it came on the radio. But yeah, that was the time. But yeah, so consequence, accountability. If just talking through it, is that something that you? I guess my question would be: is that something that you desire in a friend? Someone who.
I mean, I can only speak on it. Well, I guess I can't only speak on it. I can better speak on it from a male perspective. So for me, like, the accountability of financial stewardship for a male is freedom. You won't have it without it. You'll be subservient. I don't know how else to say it. And that's the ultimate, to me, if we're talking about financial therapy, we're talking about the behaviors and the lives of people shaped around finance. If you're a male in 2020, in modern society, Western world, the accountability that you have for managing money is your freedom. In the way that you want to move, in the way that you're designed to move as the male species. And you can't really do that. So if we want to get to it, that to me is the ultimate consequence from a male's perspective as you get older. Now we talking about young kid, that's different. But a grown man, that accountability is, do you like your freedom? And if not, you will find yourself to be in a position where you're subservient in a certain aspect, and it won't be as fun. You may not make the connection to the two. There's a lot more going on, but to me, if you're talking about accountability and consequences, speaking as a man who has lived as a man all his life, and has had to live in a world where money makes determinations of things, that's what I would say about accountability.
You have any stories?
And consequent stories? Yeah, plenty of stories, man. Because money is a medium of exchange, right? Yeah. It's a store of value. Mm-hmm. It basically is the moniker of valuation. It's what we use to perceive value. It's a part of perceived value. Is how, when you think about value, most of the time we attach some type of monetary amount to it because that's our medium of exchange. And to me, the medium that is exchanging is value. And the dollars just makes the math make sense in the sense that you may value something, but the market is like, it doesn't value it but to so much. But how do you explain that relationship without dollars? Or some type of currency? It's hard to. But to me, that it helps to put a dollar figure on the perceived value. It doesn't mean that's its intrinsic value, but at least the perceived value. So when it comes to, you asked me about consequence like stories, So stories would be like, for let's say a young male coming into the world, you have to deal with having to pursue what you want and having to live with real consequence. So like in school, it's all about girls for the most part. And whatever it is that you're into, maybe basketball. For us, it was like we love basketball and we love girls. And that was pretty much it. Some in between, but that was pretty much it. But the consequence of financial stewardship is backstopped by your parents. So you can go out and blow everything and still have a roof, still have food to eat, still have transportation, still have any obligations, real obligations met, whether it be school or otherwise. You have all of these things met, you have a backstop. So the way you spend money and the consequences of you spending money and how it affects you in relationships and among the world, it's not quite the same. You're really just a manifestation of whether or not your parents have money or they don't. It really is that kind of so you try to find value in other things. That's where, to me, I think clothing and sneakers take such a huge part. It's trying to figure out a way to differentiate yourself in a world where you really don't have money yet and you really can't make money yet. So anyway, in high school, I didn't have a lot of money and I didn't necessarily save the money I made. So I was working and I was buying clothes, bought a cell phone, got my first flip phone, Sprint, shout out. And I was trying to get fresh. And I was trying to get fresh because I was trying to get girl attention. And I tried to get girl attention because that's what I desired at the time. So the consequence of that, if you ask me, was back to the criteria. I didn't have a criteria for investing. I just had instinct and desire, and I chased that. As I got older, transitioning into college, and I think this is why college is such a unique space, was I was more along the spectrum of now the consequences of money matter more. Like it was more like if you spent all your money, you got a problem. If you're in college, you spend all your money, you got a problem. Yeah. Now it's still not the real world. You still got a cafeteria. I mean, you still got homies that will just let you. Like it's a communal kind of school environment, and you still have parents for the most part. Now there's stories where parents aren't always there for college kids, but for the most part, you got your parents.
Yeah. But
it's still more consequential when you spend your money. So college, good times, man. Good times.
That made me think of the story of 300. Do you remember, was it 300 when they was telling the story of the family and they would send the boy off with a knife?
Oh yeah, into the wilderness.
Into the wilderness.
Yeah, to come back a man.
Yeah, to come
Sparta.
Yeah, to come back a man. If you ain't come back, everybody was happy.
You talking about natural selection. Yeah, that's the best of the best right there. You get nothing but the best of the best.
Nothing but the best. But they found that person to be accountable when he came back. He was like, I can count on you now. You know what I'm saying?
He had to get it out the mud. For real.
I can count on you.
You gotta go find a wolf and kill him in these times?
Yeah, exactly.
They probably bigger too, man. That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, come back a dog.
Yeah,
he's coming back a straight animal. But I think that I was having a conversation with a couple of my buddies about the responsibility of a man after. I mean, in this era, with the stereotypical stories of an athlete who, after 4 or 5 years, he goes broke because he didn't understand finances, because he never had accountability, because he never had the consequences of his actions. Every time he did lose money, another season came back around.
Yeah, the backstop.
He had a backstop, you know, and it just compounded over all of those years. So with that conversation, it was like, how can we, once we identify the problem, how can we bring a solution? And to me, it was like, is it possible to bring that solution? Because even in the Bible, it talks about the prodigal son. The prodigal son, if you know the story of that, the father had a son who went off the rails. And he was so happy for his son when he came back, and the other son was like, what do you mean?
I've been loyal the whole time.
I've been loyal the whole time. But the father knows that now he can count on his son because his son went through that BS where he realized, like, yo, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm tested. So how do you grasp that concept and give it to somebody who's gonna always have that backstop? Like, when you see your son or your child walking and they fail, just learning to walk and they fail a couple times, like it's tough to run over there, to sit and not run over there.
Yeah, that's a good question.
How do you do that for finance?
I just gotta be allowed to fail. I think
Is it fail or be allowed to suffer?
I think you're gonna suffer regardless. I don't think there's escape. That's a philosophical question, but life is suffering.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into that per se, but I think no matter which way you go, there's going to be suffering, whether you have a backstop or you don't, because life is going to always suffering's going to find its way. Because what does somebody say? Adversity is not something that is what do you say? That is exclusive to the poor.
Yeah.
He's like, everybody goes through it. So that's going to always be there. The ability to fail, it does so many different things. It's hard to say. It's like freedom itself. Freedom is inherently risky because it's freedom. So it means there's a possibility of anything happening or many things happening. But you can't have the possibility of all the greatness without the possibility of all bad. And to me, that is the ultimate accountability, which is you have the freedom to choose anything, but be wise in your choice because there is consequence. And the way that nature will hold you accountable is it can either build a society or it can burn you to the ground. But it's still the same nature. And that's where, to me, that's where the accountability comes from. So if you're saying, how do you teach it? You have to give somebody the ability to really fail. Because if they don't believe that that is there, then they can continue to lean the way that they've been leaning. They don't have to stand on their own too. That's, and people say, well, you have to have a safety net. And I don't want to get into that debate. It's
different if the safety net is something that you build.
Yeah. That is true. But that's financial stewardship.
Yeah.
That's you being accountable for problems that will happen in the future that you're unaware of or you're not sure when it'll come.
Yeah.
But that's being accountable. But that person who builds that understanding comes from probably a time where they didn't have that, exactly. And that storm came.
Exactly.
It was like, oh, I didn't put my roof up yet.
Like, well, I'll put the walls first.
Yeah, I said, I thought it was gonna rain on Thursday. It's Tuesday.
It's right.
And it floods.
I got a pool now.
And I mean tsunami. That thing flat out floods.
And I got to start all over.
Yeah, but those I'm telling you, man, which I don't have to tell you, like,
consequences.
Losses are so important because don't forget the L, they suck. And that's where you can learn a lesson, and that's where the accountability to me comes from. It comes from a place of true consequence. Like, you really failed. You were supposed to have this, and you didn't have it, and because of it, you didn't get to do what you wanted to do. Those losses will bring about accountability. And if you take away the ability of someone to fail, then human behavior is going to adapt to that reality. And then when they get dumped into a reality where that isn't there and there is no floor there, you can continue to fall, you're going to keep falling until you find the floor. So you might as well let them find the floor in the first place. Unless they're super young, then their mind is still developing. That's a different conversation. But if you're talking about kids, college, pros, that's 18 plus, that's 17 plus. You got a lot of them to fail. So people will look and say, look at that, you squandered millions. You'll never get this chance again. One, that's not true. Two, is it likely? No. But that's a lesson that's going to be learned. Or if it is not, again, if it's not learned, that's where the cost comes in. But if you threw away millions and you didn't leave anything for your children per se, once the money's gone, the money's gone. So there's no, if you could do a time machine, then this is null and void. But you can't, again, this is the consequence. So whether he builds another $1 million fortune, to me, isn't the sign. It's, did he learn the lesson of the first fortune he blew, and how is he managing the money he has now?
My question is, can you be paid $1 million and not be worth $1 million?
Yeah, because you can have obligations. You can have obligations. Like, I know somebody dealing that just bought a home. Maybe not a millionaire, but well into the several thousand, hundreds thousands. Can't stand it. Stuff just keeps popping up. Cracking the pavement. Garage door broke. There's a leak on the roof. It's just, stuff just keep popping up. And it just keep, like, death by 1,000 cuts, shout out to Baby. But it just keeps slicing away, and they're like, man, like, why did I do this? But they need that consequence. Because now, the accountability should say, okay, here's the lesson I learned. I didn't really want to own a home. So why did I buy it? Now, it may still take time for them to get to that place, but that's probably where they're going to be headed. Again, I mean, shout out to my man Jim Rohn. It's not what happens to you, it's what you do. Or what you become in the process of what you do to what happens to you. So that's why I'm like, bro, nature is nature. Like, it's going to rain. It's raining outside. It's going to have freaking fires. It's going to have hurricanes, tornadoes. These things wreak havoc, but they bring about growth as well. So my thought is, I think we have leaned into a place where we're trying to safe-proof everything. And that is not nature. And what happens when you grow up in a world of safe-proof is eventually you find yourself to the real world, and you're gonna realize there is no bubble wrap on that sharp object. It's just sharp. It will cut you, and you're gonna have to get cut. So it's I don't know how you raise. I don't have kids, so I'm not here trying to tell people how to raise their kids. I have no idea how you should raise your son or daughter. But if you're asking me about financial accountability, that came from consequence, from real life consequence, where there wasn't a backstop, and I had to take an L for something I didn't prepare for, that I didn't know was coming. And most of the time, it was stuff that I knew was coming and I still didn't prepare for.
How about, let's look at the consequence of the pandemic.
I think it's still got
Ramifications, right? Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's like some days I'm completely like, man, I don't know what. Now they're saying it's airborne, or maybe not airborne, maybe it's not. But I don't think we learned.
What we needed to learn?
No.
Because we
So
haven't
again,
had
we
the
got the backstop.
Because we haven't had the consequences yet of printing money. Of
We've had people feel pain, but we haven't dealt with the consequence.
talking about as a whole, as a country, as an economy.
The the government spends more than it takes. That can't continue forever. The government spends on things that people want so that they can get voted in. When they can't continue to spend what people want to get voted in, what's going to happen? That debt is not going anywhere. So it's again, consequence. Are we accountable as a nation when it comes to fiscal health? No. No. If we were accountable, then I don't want to get political. Not, people need to go to jail. Not in the Democrat, Republican Party, lock them up kind of chant. But if we were a nation of accountability, and we know some of the forces that led to a lot of the crashes that we've experienced, then we would hold those people accountable. We don't hold those people accountable. They eventually retire and they get replaced by other people. So if we don't learn that lesson, then we continue the bad behavior. This is the same thing with the individual's life. It's no different. Eventually, America will have to deal with the real world. And when it does, it's going to realize that its standard of living has been on the back of other nations. And we're going to have to come to the nature's point of view, which is you consume what you produce. And what you don't produce, you trade for. What you trade for with something you produce. That's the true nature of trade. It has become an IOU dollar-filled world. Again, I have to get into that, but eventually if we were to go back to a different standard or a new standard altogether,
without the dollar being back in it.
The country who's going to suffer the most is the country who's benefited from the system currently in place, which is America. So the consequence would be our standard of living would have to drastically decline. That consequence would teach us what's most important when it comes to finance as a country, which is you have to produce stuff. And how do you produce stuff? What's that prerequisite? You gotta have something saved. So we would have to save and produce our way out of it. And that's a longer
journey.
That's a grind.
That's a grind.
That's a grind. That's gonna be a grind.
Yeah.
So that to me is where the nation would be. But on a nation level, the backstop that exists is far more powerful than the average person. Your parents don't instill the faith of an entire currency system. You know what I'm saying? They just instill faith in you that they can do what you need them to do and you need them to do it. And even then, that's a false sense of hope. But at a nation level, I mean, that's not easily going to be tackled. But that's, to me, is where accountability and consequence have a great relationship, because they happen regardless. It's either you see it and you make change, or you see it and you don't, or you don't see it and you don't. Consequence will still roll. It's an equation. It doesn't even need people for that to continue.
I do think there's two types of people. People who want to see it and people who don't want to see it.
It's hard, man. Seeing your faults is not, it sucks.
Yeah, seeing your fault.
It's not good.
It brings a level of pain and discomfort that you have, that I had to learn how to take. You know, I just saw a video, social media, and not to get, racist or talk about the racial injustice.
Not to get racist.
Not to get racist. I'm not even,
you got the hot takes today, huh?
Yeah. Nah, because people, when it comes to racism, I believe it's important for us to understand that we're all human. And I don't believe, or nor do I judge anybody for their perception of life. Like, if you want to live that way, or you desire to feel that way because of the color of my skin, that is perfectly fine with me. You know what I'm saying? If you have preferences, or whatever you get, that's perfectly fine with me. I appreciate the fact that I'm aware of it now and I know how to operate. What I wasn't comfortable with was when it wasn't brought to light. Mm-hmm. I wasn't comfortable with that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not, so there's a million reasons, you know, I've heard people say they upset that, you know, now that certain people are in office, you know, you see a lot more racism now. Whether that is true or not, I believe like statistics could.
To me, you just gotta ask questions. So, to me, let's talk about the subject we're talking about, racism, right? When we talk about racism, what are we actually talking about? We're typically talking about something unjust in a moment that has led to violence or potential violence. And then I always ask myself, how do I know the stories that I know? Somebody told them to me. Who told them to me? I got them from the media. Okay, what's the media? They are companies. Okay, what are they driven by? They're mostly publicly traded. They have shareholders. They got to make a dollar.
Yeah.
How do they make a dollar? They need eyeballs. How do they get eyeballs? They need to be controversial. How do they get controversial? They shed light on things that drive divide into the nation. How do they do that? What are some of those things? Race is one of those things. Okay, what do they talk about when they talk about race? Right now, it's about cops killing black people. So, because that is the thing, that is why you know all the names of the people that you know. But don't forget, in that same year, those people that you know, there were thousands of other people killed that you don't know. So why do you know the names you know, and why don't you know the names you don't? That to me is where I would start. That helps me to kind of shake myself up, because viral emotion is real.
Yeah.
And I have to sit back and say, wait a minute, why? And it sounds so insensitive. Probably shouldn't even say this on there, but I just had an epiphany where I was like, I'm about to burn down Atlanta because somebody in Kenosha died, Wisconsin? I'm gonna burn Atlanta down? Why?
I think that's counterproductive on so many levels. But even with that being said, when someone shows me that they are feeling a particular way, how I respond to it,
That's tough, man.
you know what I'm saying, is on me.
I know.
Life is a rigorous response to adversity. Like, how are we gonna respond to that? And Martin Luther King said, only love could drive out hate. Can only. But what type of love is required, and what type of love do we have? What type of love is in us, and what type of love is required? And I think that will allow us to process and move accordingly. So if somebody shows me that they are their particular perspective, that doesn't mean in my opinion, should change anything else I have going on in my life, because I understand that this is a distraction to what the purpose of what God has intended for me to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
I'm with you. I think that's gonna be a fight.
of course,
You said love. That has become, because whose perception of love? You see what I'm saying? Like, whose love are we basing this off of? Are we talking about God's love? Are we talking about man's love? Are we talking about woman's love?
But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying God is. But that's the thing. So I can only, again, speak from my perspective. I can only cover my perspective.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so what I did was I needed to find out what love was. So I started reading anything that had something to do with love. I'm not talking about infatuation. I'm not talking about sexual desire. I'm talking about what is love. So anything that had to do with love, I started reading about it. And so one of the books, The Latin Factor, he said the two things he lived by is what can I do to increase my ability to love? And what experiences can I learn from today? Those are the two things at the end of the day. At the end of the day, I need to ask myself, what can I do to increase my ability to love, and what experiences did I learn? So you can't increase your ability to love until you come across something that's controversial. That's the only way you can increase your ability to love, in my opinion. something or seek to understand something that you didn't know before. So if I'm meeting kids. I went to the Boys and Girls Club, and I got out of my way. I got out of the things that I need, and I will seek to help and understand what's going on with these kids. My level of love increased. So even at the most controversial moments of somebody who's being racist to me, or I'm not racist, or racist to the idea of me. You know what I'm saying? Which is to me is two different things. Being racist to the idea of me, I'm trying to understand what if that opportunity presents itself. Now again, I'm on a journey. You know what I'm saying? So I don't need to stop at every rest stop and have a conversation or use the bathroom when I'm on a journey. You see what I'm saying?
No, yeah, cause what were we talking about again? I'm trying to
We
figure out
were talking about accountability and consequences. Somehow, some way, we found our way to talking about
Well,
the nature of the United States.
You have to be careful because it'll take away from your personal accountability. Because you can take either side. You can hate everybody who's for it. You can hate everybody who's against it, and it'll become this. We would be great if it wasn't for these people.
And that to me is.
And it's like that. Anytime an equation
of that magnitude generalizes.
Or just anytime an equation of happiness doesn't include you, you're in trouble. Well, the other side. But again, I get swept in that too. I'm like, oh no, like, slow down. My happiness is not dependent on anything going on.
Mm-mm. Happiness ensues.
Yeah, this is.
It had nothing to do with.
This is just something to debate, be upset, be angry over. Now everybody wants you to vote. Nobody's yet to tell me what exactly I'm voting for. Another accountability.
Yeah.
Consequence. The consequence of not holding us accountable. The consequence of not holding yourself accountable. Honestly, the consequence of not holding yourself accountable is you have to relive something you could be past.
That's deep. That's very deep. It's deep, but it's very simple. Because it's deep because it goes through every facet in an area of your life, whether it's religion, whether it's athletics, whether it's school, whether it's finance, whether it's politics. But it's simple because if you don't learn from your experiences today, you're going to go through right back where it'd be like that. The Pirates of the Caribbean scene where Jack,
it's like, did we pay?
Like that's
the right. Remember what
y'all know that scene where Pirates of the Caribbean he runs out the scene and he comes back this way. And he runs and he comes back and he's like, wait a minute, then he runs and he comes back this way. I think that's exactly what they were. I know art allows you to think when you see a scene, whatever you perceive out of it is why it's art. But I believe that scene was made for that particular part of life where you find yourself in that state of, I forget what the word is. It was a Greek, not Hades, but the part before they pass over, where it's like they
purgatory.
Purgatory. It's kind of like that state. And you haven't learned a lesson, and you just keep going through fighting the same quote unquote demons or ideas or whatever struggles or sufferings that you have in your life. But once you understand that and you hold yourself accountable and you identify the consequences and you endure that pain, okay, now it's time to go to another level, and now there's going to be other opportunities that you gotta do. And one of the ones, and that's why I brought it up, was one of the biggest ones to me that the media portraying us, because again they want eyeballs and they want votes and they want ratings and they want everybody wants something at this particular time, is racism. And it's easy because now that you can just get on your phone, and because of this crazy situation, rest in peace Breonna Taylor, we have a lot of people who are pouring out their emotions at a time right now because of an innocent body was slain. You know what I'm saying? Innocent body was slain from the information that we received. An innocent body was slain, and somebody's not held accountable for it.
But this is what I don't understand. Is I understand that, but what is? I guess why does society have to come to a halt because of it?
And again, that's a great question. And I don't really give too. I'm gonna try to say this when it comes to society, the most refreshing days when I backed up from society, for me. So what society does,
Society.
yeah, that's actually a bar I got in the song. Check that out. Yeah, but what society perceives and how they react to something, to me, is just the masses of people's opinions targeted around a particular set of information. So why does society need to stop? I don't even know if I want to even tackle that one.
Okay. Yeah, it's just.
You know what I'm saying? I don't even know if I want to even.
Nah, we gotta.
Yeah, I don't even know if I want to.
Don't censor us, YouTube.
Yeah.
Cool.
We're cool. We appreciate your services. Why society, why people feel, why the masses feel a particular way. We can get deep into that, as deep as we necessarily. My question is, okay, now that we got this information and regardless of what side of the fence you're on, at the end of the day, you're going to be laying in your bed, and you're going to have your thoughts, and you're going to have your ideas, and you're going to have your emotions, and you're going to have you're going to have your future and possibly other futures of other people that you care about in your hand, and either you're going to be able to sleep good at night or you're not going to be able to sleep good at night. And that piece is going to be determined on your ability to have accountability for yourself, your actions, your thoughts, what you did throughout the day. And if you do not if we do not own up to what we did throughout that day, eventually the consequences are going to be waiting for us in the future. So when it comes to that particular situation, you might escape the gavel, you might escape and you might escape whatever you feel like, you got away from. Or you might feel somebody else escaped it. And now you're missing out on what I'm missing out on what I need to be holding myself accountable for. If that makes any sense. I'm so focused on what somebody else, judgment somebody else should have, that I'm missing my own judgment. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I'm missing, like,
Because the ego is like, you're aware of people who judge you.
Yeah.
But you not necessarily are aware of the judgments you lay on other people. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And it sometimes it's, yeah, I try to,
It's hard.
It's
People
true.
piss you off.
yeah, they do.
They irritate you. They upset you. They say things that it's like, you almost got to check them like, what did you say?
Yeah. And I don't know what happens in that moment for how what type of day somebody else has. So that's why it's very important that you have a level of gratitude and a level of gratitude for everybody that you approach. Like, that's the love I'm talking about. When you approach them, no matter what type of wrongdoing they've done to you, you love them regardless because it sets you free. So when you're laying in bed at night, you can be like, you know what? I don't get